Hello. Well, we're talking about the Ivory Billed Woodpecker today. So, hello, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Keith Collins, and I'm an Ivory Bill searcher and have been one for about 18 winter seasons now. I started in 2005, and I'm still going at it today, this summer of 2023. But I'd like to share some things I've learned about the Ivory Billed Woodpecker with you that are a little different than what you're going to get elsewhere. Now, there's a lot of good books like James Tanner's book if you really want to learn some more about the Ivory Billed Woodpecker, but I'm going to go into detail on a few things. One is a couple of my sightings because they were very unique and it's kind of exposed a type of flight style that nobody else is mentioning. I'm going to go into a great deal about the double knock systems because what I've got there should be a game changer pretty easily. And then the third part of my presentation is really an explanation of why I'm coming out of the closet, so to speak, now, because there's some things happening with the Fish and Wildlife Service. They want to declare the Ivory Billed Woodpecker extinct, and also some of the things that are happening on the wildlife refuges in Arkansas. But anyway, this is going to go into a fair bit of detail about those things and not too much else. But I've been doing this for, like I said, 18 years. I've spent probably $100,000 of my own money doing this. I've got at least $30,000 in camera equipment, and of course different boats and kayaks and motors and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not trying to impress upon you anything other than the fact that I'm pretty serious in this endeavor. And so thanks for joining me, and please listen through all the way to the end. I appreciate it. Like I said, if you really want to get into the Ivory Billed Woodpecker, this is one of the best books. It's written by James Tanner. He was the one who did the research at the Singer Tract back in the late 1930s. So it's kind of like the Ivory Billed Bible. But anyway, I'm going to get started, trying to press upon people the difficulty of searching for this bird and getting a picture. One, the habitats are extremely difficult to get around in. You can go in and you'll be in mud, and then you're going to be in water, and then you're going to go be in water over here, and then it could be 6 feet deep water. You just don't maneuver around in all these flooded forest systems very well. Now, I've searched the Ocklackney River, Apalachicola River, Choctawhatchee River, and in the southern end of the White River. The southern end of the White River, you got some areas you can walk around in, but predominantly they're all really wet and they're all hunting zones. And so birds act quite a bit differently in hunting zones. They're really, really skittish. And that goes for the pileatids and the wood ducks and all those birds. So, it makes it a lot harder to search these areas, and you can't really say, oh, I've seen 10,000 acres, because they're a moving target. They're only 12 ounces, and they're fast and they're quiet. These are not real vocal birds. I've had sightings. I've had 6 good sightings, but they're all less than 2 seconds, and they're gone quietly. Whereas the pileated will take off and they'll scream, bloody murder, and so will the wood ducks. But again, it's just people don't always appreciate these swamp systems. Even James Tanner's area in the Singer Tract, which is now the Tensaw National Wildlife Refuge, you can walk around it, and it may be wet in the winter and it may be muddy, but you can travel around. Here you hear something, you're like, okay, it's 200 yards off there, and I'm kind of can't get there. But and even when the leaves are off the trees, it's really can be a tangled mess. So getting a photo and seeing through this is very difficult. So I think you get the idea. And one of the best articles that I saw and really kind of made me laugh came out around 2008. And this was Gorilla Experts, Spectacular Find in Isolated Forests of the Republic of Congo. First wildlife census revealed that 125,000 western lowland gorillas are now thriving. And I thought, so the scientists just discovered 125,000 3 to 400 pound apes that nobody knew about. And in the next page, it's interesting because it says one of the main reasons the gorillas have been thriving is obvious to anyone who's ever spent time in the swampy forest that make up what explorers like Richard Ruggiero of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service sometimes called the Green Abyss. These swamp environments are extremely difficult to get along in. They are. But I'd rather search for a gorilla than an ivory billed woodpecker because an ivory billed woodpecker is a lot harder to do. So I'm going to get right to it. Like I said before, I've had 6 sightings. They were all very brief. I always carry a camera with me. It's always in my hand. And I got pictures of trees, but I couldn't get the birds. I wasn't fast enough. So, but I saw a flight style once, and it was really unique. But I want to read you a couple things about flight styles that are in James Tanner's book. It says, usually the flight resembles that of a pintail, straight with rapid wing beats, a resemblance accentuated by the slender neck and tail. Okay, so I really like the pintail part and the rapid wing beats. It doesn't sound like a pileated, right? And, you know, a lot of descriptions of its flight are very similar to other woodpeckers, the flowing and the upswing, and they do have a slow style of flight. But this one is the fast flight. In flight, the ivory bill looks surprisingly like a pintail. Its neck is long and slender, its tail long and tapering, and the wings rather narrow. Basically the same kind of description. Well, I'm going to show you what I saw. It was December 25th, 2010 on Bruce Creek. And I was about a half mile down on the creek, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, about 30 feet up, left side, it shot in front of me, and it just went right through the treetops. I mean, it didn't weave, it didn't die, it went right through the treetops. And I'm going to play this again for you. And what was really interesting about it, and I got a great look at it, and I had pencil and paper on me, so I drew everything out, was the abdomen. Most of your hawks, actually all the hawks, ducks, sparrows, pileated woodpeckers have kind of a fat abdomen here. You know, look like B-52 bombers. And this guy was just beautifully sleek. And then you've got flapping only from the wrist out. And it flaps about 20 degrees up, 20 degrees down. So the amount of upstroke and downstroke is equal. And it's very, very fast. It's probably faster than what I'm showing you here because it was kind of a blur, a little bit like a hummingbird. And I sent drawings of this to one ornithologist and never heard back. And I've talked to another ornithologist and had his head scratching and Googled a flight expert, you know, and he just said, I don't know. I've never seen a bird fly like this, never heard of it, and I've tried Google flapping from the wrists out, and it just never comes up. So there's got to be an ivory billed woodpecker out there somewhere in a specimen that somebody can do an MRI on, because the bone structure will be unique, as will the muscle structure and the ligament structure. I've already talked about this with a radiologist who was a birder friend of mine, and he gave me a dissertation on all this. So, you know, if somebody's got one, great, please have that done. If not, let me know. I will pay for the MRI. I've got friends who are in the ornithology field who might be able to do a good job on diagnosing this. Jumping over to Don Eckelberry. This is one of his pencil drawings of the ivory bill. He was the last person on the Singer Track, 1944, and there was still a female ivory billed looking or flying around there. And so he wrote, and I looked and looked and looked, and this is one of the things I found he wrote. After resting quietly for a time, she suddenly flew off in a straight duck-like flight, pintail, say, in which there seemed to be very little movement of the inner wing, the secondaries, most of the action being beyond the wrist. So he's describing a duck-like flight and most of the flapping being beyond the wrist, which is exactly what I saw, except I got a really good look at it. And he's the only one. There's nobody else has ever mentioned it. As a matter of fact, it took me quite some time to find this reference because I was looking at Ivory Billed flights and I was looking at everything I could. So a lot of people don't, a lot of Ivory Billed searchers don't know about this. And so please, we need an MRI. I'm jumping to cameras now. I'll tell you, I'm gonna try to make this a little bit quick because I don't want to have this too long. Getting a picture of Ivory Billed, like I said, they're really fast. They're in an environment that's generally heavily forested. I've got a lot of equipment from 500 F4s all the way down to 2870s. But the problem is, if you've got autofocus on, you're never going to be able to catch a bird in flight. It's just not going to happen, especially in a forest. I can track a bird in flight out in the open sky, but not in the woods very well. And you don't have a lot of time. I've tried the video cameras. I've had the head-mounted video cameras and the handheld, and it's just an issue of shutter speed and quality image sensor. You just can't really get a good picture. So I kept playing, and I finally found out a solution. This is Nikon's 7300 lens. I put this on my D850, and then what I do is I really thought about all the sightings and how far people were from the sightings, and so I thought, okay, most of them are happening, you know, about 60 to 80 feet out, you know, but I can't do manual focus and I can't do autofocus. So I focused on trees 60 to 70 feet out. I zoom out to 300, focus on the tree. And then what I would do is flip it to manual after that. So now I've got it stuck at that focus level, you know, and I got it in manual, and it's about right there and about the middle of the infinity sign, but it could be different for different cameras. And then I tape the ring. So everybody's asking me why I got blue tape on my camera. What I've done is this ring is the manual ring, so I want to lock that too. So I flip it to manual so the autofocus won't start jumping around, and then I lock this. So now, strangely enough, everything from 50 to infinity is in good focus, so I never have to focus. Now I zoom back to 70 millimeters, so I got more of a shotgun view, a bigger field, and I never look through the viewfinder. I always just hip shoot. And I can usually get on something within a second and a half, 2 seconds, and get it. And here's an example of some of the pictures. You know, and I do this all day long. Every time I'm out, I'm taking a picture of everything that comes by to keep myself in, you know, condition. This I saw him forever. This is a 6-second view. I saw him coming around the trees in the bend of a river, pileated. He flares, and it's not a perfect picture, but it's a good picture. And you know, he flares, and I had one on the wood there, but then he took off as soon as he saw me. This is just a pileated flying by, another pileated flying by. The part I like about it too is the pileateds, when they take off, they'll go into the woods frequently, and then they turn left or right. Of course, they're screaming the whole time, and so you get a view between the trees, a little view, little view. Well, I can catch it, you know, and see here it is. It's obviously, you're seeing the underside of the coverts on the other side of the wing, and so I can catch them. There's one up in here. So even these obscure, you know, there's the underwing coverts on the pileated. Here's a pileated way up there, you know, that's pretty far away, and the image sensor is good enough that, you know, I got that white on the back side of the wings of the pileated, so, you know, it works on that. And Hinga, there's a great egret out there. There's another pileated up here. I'll just zoom in on it so I can show you. And, you know, it's not a great picture, but there's no other way to get it. So the bottom line is, this is a system that works really well in a swamp when you don't have a lot of time. And so the reason why I'm telling you about this is, there's a barred owl, there's another pileated I'd zoom in on and show you, but I think you get the idea. So what I'm doing is I'm leading up to my second sighting, because, you know, I think I got it all down, right? You know, I got the camera system and I can get on within a second and a half, 2 seconds. So this spring in March, I'm down in the White River, and I'm driving down here, and I park here. This is Jack's Bay. But I decided, you know, it was my first day back, and I'm going to go for a walk in the woods. So I parked here, shut the door, and I walked about 50 yards. And off to the left, I hear a double knock, really good, loud double knock. And I went, oh, that's nice. And so I decided to walk for it towards the double knock. And I walked very quietly, always looking up, hand on the camera, you know, and I got to a place where the trail ran out. And so I thought, okay, fine, I'll turn back. Well, I'm almost all the way back. And at the base of a tree, this bird shoots, just gone. But I had the camera in my hand, and I'm going, I got him. I saw the secondaries. I call it a light bar. It's like, you know, because I'm 6'4", and it's only about 60, 70 feet away. And I had the camera up, and I'm just pulling the trigger. And it's like tick, 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 taking pictures. And after about 4 seconds, I'm going, I'm not seeing it. What happened to this bird? It didn't come up. It didn't turn. And then I stopped, and I went, I know what I saw, you know. And I thought, I looked at I said, I know I saw the secondaries. I could see them all aflutter. You know, they were all like this. And I went, but it wasn't flapping. That's when I realized it took off from the base of this tree with that wing style. It was flapping from the wrists out, and it was flapping so fast, but there was no airspeed built up. The secondaries were vibrating. And so some were up, some were down, they were like crooked. And the reason why I mentioned this flight again is because I didn't expect that flight to be used from a dead stop, let alone near the ground. But evidently it saw a gap in the forest down low and just took off low and straight away. I don't know about that flight style. It's strange. I don't know why a bird would evolve to fly like that. I don't know if it's just a really fast for a woodpecker, and it is fast. It's a lot faster than any woodpecker I've ever seen. I don't know if it's an efficient flight style for long distance. I don't know. I would be interested to know if imperials had that same flight style or other Campephalus woodpeckers, but it sure opens up a lot of questions about evolution on flight. So that's pretty much the end of my flight stuff, because it was unique, you know, and I'm not going to go into any more discussion on that. So I'm going to move along to, if I can get my computer to, this is where the bird was. He flew, that last discussion, he flew off right at the base of this tree. He just gone. So it was a pretty thick woods. I was really hoping he would come up and into some open space, but it wasn't meant to be. So when I first started searching, you know, I started out in southern Arkansas, and then I ended up finally on Bruce Creek, where I started to cut my teeth and actually hear stuff and see stuff. Like that first sighting was on Bruce Creek. But I didn't have, you know, I read about Cornell and all the ARUs and the thousands of hours, and the poor kids in school listening to those recordings. And I'm like, wait a second, I can't do anything like that. I work full time. But I use this at work, and it's a voice recorder. I hang it around my neck, and so I brought this with me all the time, just in case. And I did get good Kent calls and stuff. But I brought it with me, and I was down about 3/4 of a mile down on Bruce Creek one day, and I heard this Babe Ruth locked into a fastball. I mean, it was just this crack, and it seemed to be 300 or 400 yards out in a line of trees. And so I turned this on right away. Left it on for a couple minutes, nothing happened. Turned it off. A couple minutes later, crack, did it again. Well, this process over the course of 30 minutes happened 5 times. This loud knock. And of course I'm thinking, oh, James Tanner said the young male in Max Bayou was single knocking, and it may be a juvenile thing. And I was like, it's gotta be something like that, because it's so loud. So anyway, I ended up recording 5 times, a couple minutes on every recording. I put it up to my ear, and I'm listening, and nothing. I went back to my camper that night, and nothing was happening. Couldn't hear a thing. And so after a few days, I went back to Huntsville, Alabama, where I'm from, and I put the, I remembered that this Olympus software came with a software package. So I thought, oh, I can download this to my PC and then listen to my PC because I got some good speakers. So I did. And I downloaded all the recordings. And hold on a second here. Oops, too far. I downloaded all the recordings and I heard a double knock 10 seconds into the first recording. Second recording, double knock. Third recording, double knock. Fourth recording, double knock. Now, what I use is, my pictures got disorganized. I use clip speakers. They're great. I'm not getting anything from clips for this, but they're really, really great. And I used to listen to music all the time when I'd be stuck writing reports. But that's the trick. This is the whole trick to the whole system is you magnify your recordings. So I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it on my recording until I put it on the computer. And so then I started thinking, I can do a knock survey. And all I need is a couple of sticks of wood. I've got the recorder and I've got the clip speakers. So we're talking $300 is all it takes. And so what I did is I started knocking. And boy, was I successful. I really, really had no idea that this would work, but it did. And I tested it at Bruce Creek for quite some time. And after a while, I thought, I could survey anywhere. I can do this. And so I thought about the Apalachicola National Forest because it's actually a bigger system than the Choctawhatchee. And so one day I grabbed my other boat, which has a 75 horsepower motor, and I jumped on. I went down there, and my brother said, well, what's your goal? I said, well, I want to find the Ivory Bills at 2 locations down there. And so I drove about 20 miles up the river, turned around, have a trolling motor, and so I could go downstream quickly. And by the end of that weekend, I went home, and that first recording, which only took a couple hours, I had two double knocks on one end of the river, and about 15 miles down, I got 2 double knocks on another end of the river. So I was really kind of blown away and still in kind of shock about this because I thought, well, this is easy. I just went onto a new river system, spent a few hours, and I got double knocks. And so, like I said, these are my original knockers I've been using for 15 years. They look terrible, but they're still working, and I'm kind of partial to these guys. Ultimately, I have evolved into a boat with a 30 horsepower, super fuel efficient. I got a trolling motor on the motor, which is the best thing since sliced bread. And I got a trolling motor up front. Both trolling motors have their own batteries, and I got a paddle, and I got rescue. I've been lost on the swamps once, and I'm trying to make sure I never get into my position like that again. But this boat is just really excellent. I can even carry my kayak with it, so I can get out into remote areas and stuff. But this is what I now use for the last 10 years for doing knock surveys. And we got a little video for you. And it's not playing. Actually out on the water, heading out before it starts to get really light. Drive up the river about 10 miles. We get there, you gotta check for wind noise. If there's no wind noise, we're in business. And if I get up and the wind is already in the trees, I'm done for the day. It's not gonna happen. Because you really, by the time you magnify sound, all those peripheral noises will ruin your recordings. So you're up at the river, you stop, you turn the trolling motor off, no wind, airplanes, can't even hear them in the distance. It's gotta be completely quiet from airplane noise. Same for boat motors. And then the other thing is water noise. A lot of times you'll have the stream running over logs and stuff, and you'll hear the trickling of the water. That'll ruin a recording. Assuming all those things are good, and usually your best time is sunrise till about 9:30 in the morning, and winds start to pick up. Then how do you do a knock? Well, it's pretty easy to do, and I usually 90% of the time just do a single knock. I can do a double knock, but not every time do I do it well. So you hold your sticks kind of loose, and then right before you're ready to do the knock, I'll put this in my teeth, and I know this is weird, but I do not want to record my own knock, because by the time I magnify the recording, it's horrible. It hurts your ears real badly. So I'll put this here. Very loose. Quick, turn it on. You don't talk. You gotta be quiet. My recordings are about 20 seconds. I used to record to 30 seconds, but 20 to 30 seconds, I didn't get much. So I just skipped on that. I keep it down to 20 seconds. I generally just hold it up like this, be real quiet. Then after 20 seconds, I turn it off, turn the trolling motor back on, get up to speed, go down about another quarter mile, do it again. And you can repeat that over and over as long as you got the right conditions. But like I said, by 9:30, you really start to get winded out. The rare glorious day, the whole day is quiet, is nice. But over time, you get really used to that. And that's how you do it. It's kind of boring, it's not real exciting. But then by the time you get home, you get to listen to the recordings. That's another thing. Okay, so you go up the river, and this is just a little short stretch. There's some assumptions I have to make, and I actually concur with James Tanner on some of his statements about how far you can hear. I'm pretty sure I'm hearing the birds about a quarter mile out. I'm pretty sure that the recordings are probably picking up a little further, maybe to a half. But let's say you do go up the river, and this is the Florida River Island, and yes, I have searched up here a couple times, not extensively, and I have had double knocks up in here. But about the middle here, you've knocked and you've recorded, and then if you ever hear, you certainly make a mark where the direction was. You're never going to be exact, but at least it's a mark. And then you float and you do another one, and you float and you do another knock, and you float and do another knock, and you float and you do another knock. Now, of course, you can write down your GPS position on one of these, and of course, you can write down this is recording number 2, and then if recording number 2, the GPS position, and if you hear something, by all means, you write down, I heard something to the west, I heard something to the east, because those are important. But what happens after you do it a few times, you will start to develop a cluster. And this may be a feeding area. If it's early in the morning, this may be a roost area, or if it's late in the day, it could be a roost area. But you do develop patterns of their favorite areas, which is really neat, because then you study your satellite images, and then you can study the forest images, and you can start to put 2 and 2 together. I can kind of look at a lot of the forest systems and go, this would be, I really want to do a survey here, or I want to do a survey here. And ultimately, I did do that in the Ocklackney River. I wasn't even planning on going there. Somebody said, oh, you got to a campground, the river's real pretty. I looked at the satellite images, and I went, oh my, this is good. And I picked out an area, and I thought, I'll bet if I was an Ivory Bill, they'd be in this area. And sure enough, I got double knocks there. Now, I've only spent 3 days on 2 separate occasions on Ocklackney, and I have heard them and have recorded them, so they're on the Ocklackney River too, but that's neither here nor there. What to expect when you do this? Now, I took 399 double knocks and I graphed them old school on paper, because I'm not, big into computers anymore. But this side is the knocks, this side is the seconds. The seconds go out to 25, and the knocks are going to go up to 60. So in the first second, I got 57. I probably missed a few because my recorder wasn't on, but then it goes 47, 52, 44, 37. But the bottom line is you can see the number of knocks goes way down. And by the time you're at 20 seconds, you're about done. The other interesting thing is, of the 399 double knocks, 340 were in the first 10 seconds. So from here, 340, and then the rest were here. So 85% landed in 10 seconds. So, at the end of the day, you don't have a lot of data to go through. Last year, I was so excited to get back out there. I went right up to one of my hot spots, and it was really cool, because in 30 minutes, I did 10 knocks. I recorded 7 double knocks, and heard 2 of them. And, that's in 10 recordings. That's in 200 seconds worth of recordings. So the volume of knocks you can get on your recordings, certainly far exceeds what you're going to get anywhere else. Um, you know, when I first started doing this too, I mean, I did try to tell somebody and I never heard back from them about it because I thought it was valuable information to know, but I doubted myself as much as anybody can. I was on the Apalachicola, and a lot of these double knocks are faint. I would say 80% are faint, and so when you've got the speakers playing and your head's right up in it, and I'm hearing these things, and I'd start to get a little bit disgusted and go, I'm not definitive on this. And so what I started doing was no-knock surveys. So I'd go down the river, do a knock survey. Next day I'd do a no-knock, then I'd do a knock, then I'd do a no-knock. And my no-knock surveys, I didn't have faint double knocks. I had nothing. So I eliminated all those faint double knocks by just not knocking. And then I really tried to solicit the pileateds, because people will say, oh, it's a pileated, and it's not, but the pileateds have a different tap pattern and everything, and they don't double knock. But so I could hear them feeding, and everywhere I heard them feeding, and they really love the Tupelo forests, and the Ivory Bills don't. I just don't get them knocking in those areas. But so when I'm near the Tupelos and I hear them feeding, I'm trying to solicit them all the time, and I get nothing. So I even went up back home to Huntsville, and I did double knock surveys down the Tennessee River, the Paint Rock River, the Flint River, because they all are loaded up with pileateds, and of course I didn't get anything, no faint double knocks. So, you know, don't think that you're going to come up with a bunch of these fantastic sounding double knocks. Vast majority, you're not going to hear. On occasion, you do hear them. Now, I will say this though, as far as how many double knocks I have actually heard over the years, I'm pushing 125 to 150. Without the solicitation, I don't think I could get to 10, you know. But with this, I have heard more double knocks than anybody alive, and recorded well in excess of 1,000 double knocks. You know, and I'm not making this up. But this just is. This is not rocket science. Ah, there's my other half of that 5 or 6 second picture of that pileated. He got out of order. You've seen the clipped speakers, Pro Media 2.1. Let me pause this a second. I'm going to show you a couple of recordings. A lot of them are really faint, and so I got to be at my clipped speakers by the time I record to this, to this, to this. I doubt it's going to transmit, but I'm going to show you anyway. That was a good one, of course, and I'm playing it 3 times so you can get your ears kind of tuned up a little bit. He was on a sharp tree. He was on a hard tree. I don't know if you can hear that one, but there is a difference between a deader tree and maybe a tree he's scaling and it's more freshly dead. It's a sharper note. Now I can hear that one clearly here. I'm not sure if that one's coming through. Oh, this is my favorite. This is cool because you're not going to hear this one. It's too faint to hear on this system, but this one and this one are both preceded precisely by a Parula warbler. So he goes zip double knock, zip double knock. And I think I'll play a couple of them twice for you. Okay, let me see, which one is this? Oh, this, you're not going to hear this. But this is more or less, I can hear all these on my speakers. It's not going to transmit through all this equipment. But what's fascinating about all this is over the years, it's usually they travel in pairs. So I get a lot of 2s on a recording. And you can tell it's 2 different birds because the distance they do it in the different trees. But then I remember the first time I got 3 was in the Apalachicola River system, and I got 3, and I went, oh my God, they had a baby. Assumption, right? but I was kept getting threes, and then a year or two went by, and I kept getting back to twos, and then one year I kept getting threes, and for the first time I kept getting threes in this one area that was hot. I lost them 3 days, and by this point in time I was taking the PC with me and getting real-time feedback right as soon as I got back to the camper. 3 days I couldn't find them. I went further down the river, I couldn't find them. So I said, heck, I'm just going several miles upriver, and I picked up three. So I think they moved upriver. I kept picking up the three up there. Next year I got four. And I was, like, okay, did they have another one this year? Now they regrouped into a group of four. Well, in the last year, I think this was, February 15, 22, I got six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in less than 15 seconds on one recording. Now, go back to that graph. That was a lot of recordings to get that data. But I don't know how to make this out, because it could be six. I'm inclined to think it's six birds. I've never heard two birds go knock, knock. I mean, it's always just two birds doing it. And even if I try to double knock real quickly back again to solicit it again, it doesn't usually work. It's like there's some rule of thumb where no, we'll answer once, and then we gotta wait a little while before we're gonna answer again. But I don't know what to make of it. I'm hoping that it was six birds that grouped together before breeding season, because I have noticed at breeding season a split, and they separate out. But anyway, that's the excitement, and I've got a few with six on it. These guys, swallowtail kites, beautiful. There was an area on the Apalachicola River where there would be a dozen of them in a tree in the mornings, and my friend Chris, who's been with me a couple times down there, and they're beautiful. 12 of them just sitting on there, and you could park across this creek, and they just sit there. But it was also in an Ivory Billed hotspot, and I thought, I really should do a knock, but I don't want to disturb the birds. And I went, wait a second. Everywhere I bang those sticks together, and they can be really loud, birds don't react. They just don't react. So I thought, fine, I'm going to do it. So I did a knock. They didn't even stop preening. They didn't even look at me. So I don't know if this is something the species of birds in these areas where the Ivory bills are at just don't take threat to somebody banging sticks together real loud, or what. But the reason for this picture was to explain this to you. This one reminds me that, the search for the Ivory bill has to be done by sound. There is no other way to do it. Even if somebody gets a picture, and if it's not a great picture, the talking heads are gonna, trash them to pieces. And even if it's a good picture, 5 years go by and they go, that was the last one. It's kind of like the last one was in the Singer track. It wasn't. That last one in the Cache River is probably dead, but they're not. But the submarine service goes by sound. I mean, they can get down there and they can hear a boat versus a ship. They can hear whales and they can hear fish, but everything is done by sound. And unfortunately, that's the way the Ivory Billed Woodpecker search has to be done. Fortunately, this is a bird that cannot resist knocking back. It can't. It's impossible. It is evolutionarily programmed to knock back. So it's like a silver platter. You want to find me, you got to do it by sound. And like I said, I've done it on 4 different river systems, and it's really successful on all of them. I've had sightings on 3 of the river systems. So if anybody can improve upon my system, I'm all for it. My knockers are about as good as it's going to get. I think my clip speakers are probably about as good as it's going to get, although you can always get better speakers. Forget the headphones. But my recording, the Olympus has been really good. Parabolic dish, unless you could get 6 of them to go 360 degrees, would probably make for better recordings. And there's possibly better recording devices. Here's my offer to anybody who really knows their bird recording and recording systems. If you want, contact me. I will take you out to my hotspots, and I will get you your double ox and let you test your equipment out, because I would be more than happy to help on that. And let me see, where are we going? So, third part, last part, White River National Wildlife Refuge. Within the refuge boundary are 160,000 acres, I think it's 168 now, of bottomland forest, upland forest, 300 lakes, natural bayous, and 92 miles of the White River. Dale Bumper's White River National Wildlife Refuge is one of the largest tracts of bottomland hardwood forest remaining in public ownership within the lower Mississippi River Valley and is designated as part of the Big Woods of Arkansas. This was an interesting comment about the place. After a tour of Arkansas, White River, and Cache River National Wildlife Refuges last summer, Secretary of the Interior Bruce Babbitt clearly was captivated by what he saw. This is the first time I've been on the White River, and I've got to tell you, I've never seen anything like this anywhere in the United States of America, observed Babbitt. The only place that's even remotely comparable is the pristine headwaters of the Amazon because of the same amazing phenomenon of rivers flowing through the forest. This is better because of the extraordinary migratory bird flight. People talk about the Everglades. There ought to be the same image of these bottomlands in the national conscience. I can agree with that. First time I was there in 2005, I thought I'd found the Garden of Eden. There were so many turkey on the roadsides and deer and bear. I ran into bear everywhere. So, White River. Here we go. This is the Mississippi Alluvial Valley. Right in here, this was all bottomland forest. These little dark slivers are what's left. This is the White River right here. And then it feeds into the Mississippi River and goes down. The places I've searched on the White River are basically the bottom, because from here up for 6 months of the year is flooded. And that's no joke. December to June, it's flooded. And I try to wait till the hunters are done because they deserve their time. But I've searched quite a bit in Jacks Bay area and then over in the Scrubgrass Bayou area. FYI, Trust and Holder State Wildlife Management area. So just make a note of that. This is just brochure. The White River's in 2 parts. It goes all the way up to highway here in St. Charles, and then there's a second part up there. A little history of the area. Timber companies cut hardwood trees in the White River floodplain 1930. Logging opens the bottomland hardwood forest, impacting habitat for migrating waterfowl and songbirds. Remember that. This was taken at the White River Refuge Visitor Center. Logging impacts migrating waterfowl and songbirds. 1935, Roosevelt, White River Migratory Waterfowl Refuge established by President Roosevelt, a refuge and breeding ground for the migratory birds and other wildlife. This 1947 and 1916 basically says soybeans came into popularity, a lot of the bottomland forests got logged, and just think about the Amazon and the ranching and the soybeans and stuff that's happened in South America. Same thing happened here. 1989, the Ramsar Convention recognizes White River National Wildlife Refuge as a wetland of international importance. Now, this is all pulled from White River stuff. Up here, both current and past management includes forest thinning. We're going to get into forest thinning. Dale Bumper's White River National Wildlife Refuge has been designated a wetland of international importance and a globally important bird area. Okay, I was really interested in this because of a lot of the forest thinning that is happening over there. So I really wanted to look into the history of it. Now, in the 1940s on the White River, they logged about 5,000 acres. Then in the 50s, about 2,500 acres. I'm sorry, logging is a bad word. It's called forest thinning. 1960s, they thinned about 48,000 acres. 1970s, they thinned about almost 55,000 acres. So just in the 60s and the 70s, we're talking about 100,000 acres. In the 80s, they dropped back to 2,500. In the 90s, they did about 10,000. 2000s, they did about almost 5,000. The 2010s is a sliver there. So this forest thinning has been really excessive over there. This is little comments. This is how you say things. Most of the forest has been thinned periodically to enhance wildlife habitat. Now you say enhance wildlife habitat, creating browse, improving turkey habitat. During the same time, about 11% of the refuge forest was planned to have habitat enhancement via mostly thinning. I love the way these guys write. They're really good writers. So around 2010, actually around 2005, they stopped thinning operations because of the Ivory Billed Woodpecker. And of course, I was told what a pain in the butt we birders are out there because we really created a stink. But they stopped it. 2008, they said, we're going back, and they're doing it again. So 2009, they started thinning. Now, this is Jack's Bay. The yellow trail is where I used to always hike, and I used to pick up a lot of double knocks out in here. So I came in one year, and this was all thinned, all this. And I asked the ranger, and he said, what is it? He says, well, you know, we're trying to improve the turkey habitat. Well, what happened about the same time is the Corps of Engineers started overflooding the refuge, and so I couldn't even get on that trail. And so I would do birding by kayak, and that's where you see all the turkey eggs floating everywhere. So they would let it down, turkeys a nest, and they'd flood it. So it took no time at all to where there's hardly any turkeys here anymore. I saw one this season. Usually I'd see 5 every day. But I did get back into here, and it's not the same forest anymore. The other place I searched a lot was the Scrubgrass Bayou. You drive down the levee, and this yellow is a road. And I used to take my mountain bike, and I would do my knock surveys all around here. And this is the hot spot right here. This is where I always got the double knocks because this forest was a little bit older. Again, the woodpeckers and all woodpecker species like the older forests. But it got logged. I'm sorry, habitat got enhanced, and that was right there, and then it got enhanced over here, it got enhanced over here. This was that first area I told you. This is another huge area, by 600-800 acres. It's another huge area, and this is still up to the power line cut on the lower half, and this is just above the power line cut. And there's a huge area here, huge area here, huge area here. Now this is where you need to get on your satellite images, Google Earth, Apple Maps, and you can do any of those. Here's a close-up that really kind of shows you the difference between, I mean, you can see all the dirt, and over here you can't, so you can see. So they do leave some trees, but what I found is they're probably taking out 50 to 70% of everything. And it's they're always targeting the older sections. They're not enhancing habitat in the young forests. They're enhancing habitat in the old ones, and I wonder why, huh? But they're taking a ton out. I can't play YouTube videos because they have copyrights, but there's a good one called Logging Continues on White River Refuge During Government Shutdown. The guy makes good videos. He's upset about not being allowed to hunt, but look who gets to come in the refuge. And so he's got the trucks coming out, and I understand his pain there because they really should have let him hunt. But and this was during COVID, and you certainly got plenty of separation out there. But it's interesting what he says as he goes in. I got nothing against the loggers. I know they got to create browse and improve habitat. And creating browse is the look. Got to create browse. You got to enhance habitat. And those are the keywords. Now we're going to go to the south end of the White River, and this is a Trust and Holder WMA, and I showed you that before. But it's really at the bottom of the White River. So here's Jack's Bay, and here's areas I search at the bottom, but it's right here. So that's the State Wildlife Management Area. There's the Mississippi River. So this area was bought for the purpose of protecting prime bottomland hardwood tracts that had been dwindling in eastern Arkansas in the early 1970s. So this was purchased to save woods. Arkansas Game and Fish owns 4,400 acres of it. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service owns 1,490 acres of it. And the U.S. Army Corps owns 4,300 acres of it. It's devastated. I tried to get in there a year and a half, and the logging trucks were flooding out so bad I had to turn around. But if you get on your satellite image, you're going to see worse than this. This whole area has been logged, thin, enhanced. This whole area, this whole area, this whole area, this whole area. All this has been thinned up in here. I just drove it about 3 weeks ago, and this is the summer of 2023. The only good forest I saw in here was some private property owned down here, and the guy had signs up all over the place, no trespassing. anything that's left isn't a forest. I call it a sapling brushy area. You know, the trees are less than 20 or 30 years old, and it's horrible. It's unbelievably horrible what this wildlife management area turned into, because I used to always love going there. Um, so, you know, I know part of the thing they talk about there is creating browse, improving habitat. So I really dug into the deer harvests. And they didn't allow harvesting on the refuge till the early 60s because, you know, World War II, the deer population in the South got hammered. When they first started, it jumped way up. They got too many deer. But since about 1965, it's been really steady, and especially this goes to 2007, so even going back like 20 years, they're all popping in the 400 to maybe 1,000 or so deer, but it's really averaging around 600-800 deer a year. Now you got to remember the refuge is flooded so much, so it's not really 168,000 acres of prime deer habitat. But so then it went up to 2007. Then I pulled all the hunting records from 2004 to present, and like there's 724 that season, 665 in 2005, 846. There's some that go to 1100, but it's jumping back and forth really stably for 40, 50 years. There's been no big swings on the deer harvests, and I've got all the records, you know, for 50 years. So the creating browse thing is, you know, it doesn't hold water. So anyway, I was interested about, I see all the deer and the turkeys on the roadways, and they're so busy creating browse. But I found out the stats on the roads. I got 98 miles of roads on that refuge. 95 are gravel, 3 are asphalt. And they got 477 miles of dirt forest management. That's logging. And then ATV trails, 50 miles, foot 5. And then there's also power line cuts going through there for plenty of browse. That's not there. And then you've got a levee going down the east side, which is about 22 miles, which has got, they browse cattle on that. This is probably Corps of Engineer property adjacent to the wildlife refuge, but there's probably 75 acres on each side for 22 miles. And then the roadways. You got all those roadways and the forest trails. You got 3,000 to 5,000 acres of grasslands in this place that didn't exist when this was a pure bottomland forest. Now, this is some of the pictures I want to show you. The forest, and this is actually one of a better aged forest, and yet you can tell it's still young. This tree could be, you know, 40 years old, and there are small trees, but it's a varying sizes and stuff. So this one's not really great for woodpeckers yet, but it's probably starting to get there. But give it 20 more years and the woodpeckers are going to love it. Unfortunately, so will the browse creators. A lot of forests are like this. They're not that big. You know, these were thinned probably in the last 25 years. This is a better one. It's got a pretty big tree and some medium-sized trees. So this one's really on the verge of getting to be really some pretty good habitat. You know, you got to look at forests differently there. You get this big tree, but then you got all these little trees, and you can tell they clear-cut it probably 15, 20 years ago and left a couple of little trees. It's a video of relatively good forest. It's not aging out, but it's getting there. This is a better one. And I think the next one is across the street. This is across the street from that previous one. This one obviously has been thinned out. But this is a lot of thin pictures. Like I said, I just spent 2 weeks back there going through all these areas that they thinned to improve and enhance habitat. This is just by the side of one road. Usually they do it along the road. Usually you got to park and walk in to see. But this area, you know, I mean, you can look in the back. There's no trees back there that are worth any size at all, but they left a few next to the road. Small forest again, really young forest. You're not getting any old forest over there. This is one side of the road where they They logged it, and then you go across the street and you can kind of see, you know. So they don't, this is not particularly old forest, but they don't let them get old over there. It's thinned out forest, more thinned out forest. It's a lot of them get like this, and then just a cover, a blanket of vines grows over everything. And same thing, same thing. It's not forest. This is a pretty decent forest here. This is prime for logging right here. I mean, I'm sorry, thinning. I mean, habitat enhancement. Promotion of herbaceous growth. That's another one. They promote herbaceous growth. And they do that on Tensaw. They're doing this on Tensaw National Wildlife Refuge, which was formerly the Singer Tract. So if you if you want to see your satellite image, just get on your satellite, go down the whole river. You're going to see that every patch of woods has been really severely thinned, much more so than what the refuge is doing, and even on Tensaw. So, okay, what have I noticed bird watching in this place? They got a lot of barred owls there. But wherever they're thinning, these guys aren't going to be nesting. Those places, they can't even hunt in those areas. They're so thick. Pileatids. All these areas that they've thinned, they've taken out 60 to 70% of the wood biomass, and they're even dropping the dead stuff. But when a forest starts to get to a certain age, and over there it seems to be 60 to 100, it really starts to attract the woodpeckers. At Scrubgrass Bayou several years ago, I never heard more woodpeckers than I've ever in my entire life. It was crazy with pileatids and red bellies, but the numbers have dropped off, and I just don't see as much since they've gone through that thinning operation. So these guys really lose a lot of feeding habitat and nesting habitat, as do the Ivory Billed Woodpeckers and all the other woodpecker species. But these guys are a keystone species. They make a lot of the big holes, which serve squirrels, of course, hooded mergansers, which nest on the refuge, wood ducks. You know, we almost drove them to extinction, and then all the wildlife refuges were formed, and they started putting up those nest boxes. Now you don't see them putting up the nest boxes anymore, but you sure do see them logging. Screech owls lose habitat. All the trees that come down, you lose acorns. All the woodpecker species, from ivory billed to pileated to red-bellied to red-headed, love acorns. Downy woodpeckers lose habitat. And the habitat with the forest fragmentation really adversely affects all the little birds, whether it's the Kentucky warblers or the nuthatches or the yellow-throated warblers. The ceruleans really should be in there, but it's rare because the forest is so small. Wood thrushes, talking about getting hurt by the fragmentation. They actually nest at Marisach Campground nearby because the trees are older, but I almost never hear them in White River. I'm sure they're in there, but as soon as you open up the forest, things change. You're going to affect nesting ability of hawks, like red-shouldered hawks and the Mississippi kites. These guys, I've never seen more of these guys in the White River, but you know, where they're logging, their numbers are dropping, as are the great crested flycatchers and the yellow-throated vireos, the Swainson's warblers, the hooded warblers, and of course, again, a wood duck. The other thing I used to see all the time, and I don't anymore, is the black bears over there. They live in the forest there, and this black bear is actually a subspecies, but the original species that was from Arkansas, they only survived in the White River, and there were 30. Several years ago, there were around 400 on the refuge, and I used to run into them all the time, and I started carrying bear spray. But I don't see many anymore at all because the state of Arkansas opened up a hunt season. And it's not hunted on the refuge, but it is hunted around the perimeter, so their numbers have dropped off. But this is a special subspecies of black bear that lives there. Unfortunately, when you keep your forest young and you never allow it to age, you don't get much of this. You could put a queen-size bed in this old sycamore tree, and this is where bears live. So if you keep your forest young, you're just not going to help the bear population whatsoever. But this guy loves it. He loves browse creating. He loves habitat enhancement because the cowbirds are coming in like crazy. And again, when you break up forests, this is what you get. And of course, they're going to lay their eggs in other birds' nests, all the small birds particularly, and the numbers of those birds will drop. So the browse creating and the habitat enhancement is greatly helping the cowbird. And then you get the little sparrow feeding the giant bird. Now the turkeys, you know, they love forests. They were doing well there, but that's a Corps of Engineers issue. I've heard they got a project going to try to alleviate some of that. And I was telling you the Corps flooded so much that there's been a pretty significant tree die-off all throughout the refuge, predominantly black locusts, oaks, and cottonwoods. So you can see all the trees dying off. But just to remind you to get on Google Earth and go look at Tensaw, look all the way down the Mississippi Valley. It's really a tragedy what the Fish and Wildlife Service is doing with the logging on the refuge. Private property is private property, you know, what can you say? But WMAs and wildlife refuges, especially the bottomland forest, should be protected. The ivory bills are a lot more widespread than people believe. They're in South Carolina, they're in Georgia, they're in Florida, they're in Louisiana. These birds have not gone extinct. If you want a photo, good luck. You're probably not going to get one, but it's once every 50 years. But the forests got to be protected. White River should go virgin. It should just be allowed to stay that way. And the hunters will be fine. They're great guys over there. The best thing I can do is quote E.O. Wilson, the world-leading conservation biologist. He's an amazing individual. Clear cutting and other even-aged silvicultural practices and timber road construction have caused widespread forest ecosystem fragmentation and degradation. The result is species extinction, soil erosion, flooding, destabilizing climate change, the loss of ecological processes, declining water quality, diminishing commercial and sport fisheries. There is no better way to save biodiversity than by preserving habitat. No better habitat species for species than wilderness. Can't say it any better. So, I have given you a way to survey these Ivory Billed Woodpeckers that works, and I've tested it out for 15 years. Like I said, I've heard a lot of double knocks. I've recorded well over 1,000. Be happy to take anybody out who I feel has got some really good ideas about recording and learning this process a little bit further, get some experience. But you know, I encourage you to look at the satellite images of those places I was telling you about and contact the Fish and Wildlife Service, because here are the leaders and here are the people that are going to declare the bird extinct along with a bunch of other species, which I now question their judgment. But anyway, that's it. Thank you for listening. I think we'll end with a barred owl. Thank you again and have a nice day.